Harper Rowe had no idea the man she was about to meet under the fireworks would be a billionaire who'd fall hard for her. She just wanted one night where she didn't feel invisible. The summer air clung to her skin as she stepped onto the grassy field of the Crescent Bay Fireworks Festival, sandals digging softly into the earth. Kids ran past her with glow sticks, couples shared cotton candy, and laughter floated like music over the crowd. She clutched her cherry lemonade tighter, scanning the sky already streaked with orange from the setting sun. It was her first time at the festival alone. Her best friend had bailed last minute for a date, and Harper had almost stayed home, but something told her she needed this. "Excuse me," a smooth voice said behind her. "Do you mind if I sit here?" She turned. And there he was, tall, broad-shouldered, in a simple gray tee and dark jeans, holding a tray with 2 funnel cakes and a bottled water. His dark hair was tousled like he'd run a hand through it one too many times, and his eyes, God, those eyes were a deep, stormy blue that didn't look away when they met hers. "It's a public field," she replied with a smile, scooting over slightly on her picnic blanket. "But if you steal my lemonade, it's war." He chuckled and sat beside her, careful not to spill the powdered sugar. "Noted, funnel cake for peace," Harper raised an eyebrow. "You're bribing me with fried dough." "Works 90% of the time," he said, offering her one. She took it, biting into the warm sweetness. "And the other 10? I usually charm my way out of it," she laughed. "And what's your success rate tonight?" He leaned back on his hands, looking out at the sky as it slowly darkened. "Too early to tell." She licked sugar off her thumb. "What's your name?" "Lennox," he said, glancing sideways at her. "Lennox James." "Harper," she replied, Rowe. They shook hands like strangers at a business lunch, both grinning at the formality. "So," he said, "what brings you here alone?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Needed a night to feel like I existed again. Work's been heavy, life too. Figured fireworks were cheaper than therapy." He nodded slowly. "I get that, and you, my driver dropped me off late. Friends ditched." "I figured the universe had other plans." "Driver?" she asked with a tilt of her head. He cleared his throat. "Long story," she let it go. "Well, whoever bailed on you missed out. This view's pretty good." The sky exploded in a burst of red and gold, the first firework cracking above them. Harper gasped, her eyes lighting up like a child's. Lennox didn't look up. He watched her instead. She leaned back, stretching her legs. "I don't know what it is about fireworks. Maybe it's the fact that they're loud and unapologetic. Like they're saying, 'This is me, take it or leave it.' I like that," he murmured. She turned to look at him. "Don't tell me you're one of those people who thinks fireworks are overrated." "No," he said, voice low. "I think they're unforgettable. Especially when you watch them with the right person." Harper blinked, unsure if he was flirting or just smooth. "Do you always talk like that? Only when I'm trying to impress someone?" She laughed again, shaking her head. "Your trouble? You have no idea." They watched in silence for a while, the sky lighting up with color after color. She found herself leaning closer to him without realizing it. His arm brushed hers and he didn't move away. "You're different," he said suddenly. She glanced at him. "That a good thing?" He nodded. "Most people I meet want something. You're just real." "I don't know how to be anything else," she said softly. They sat together until the finale, the sky roaring with color and sound that echoed deep in Harper's chest. When it ended, the crowd clapped and started to scatter, but she didn't move. Neither did he. "I don't want this night to end," she admitted. "It doesn't have to." She turned to face him. "I know we just met," he said, "but let me take you to dinner sometime, somewhere nice." "Just us?" Harper blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough to want to," Lennox said, eyes locked on hers. "And I haven't felt that in a long time." She stared at him, searching his face for a catch, a warning sign, something to tell her this wasn't real, but all she saw was sincerity. "Okay," she said after a moment. "Dinner, but only if you promise not to disappear after." "I never disappear," he said. "Not when I find something worth staying for." As they walked back toward the parking lot, he offered her his jacket when a breeze rolled in. She hesitated, then took it. It was warm and smelled faintly like cedar and something expensive she couldn't place. He opened the back door of a sleek black car waiting by the curb. Harper froze. "That's your car?" "It's just a ride," he said. With a driver, he smiled. "I'll explain over dinner." She slid in, heart racing, senses overloaded. The man she'd sat beside during the fireworks wasn't some guy from the crowd. He was someone else entirely, and yet part of her didn't want to ask too much. Not yet. As the car pulled away, Harper looked out the window, fireworks still echoing in her chest. She didn't know what she'd just stepped into, but she knew it was something more than just sparks in the sky and Lennox James. He was already falling. The restaurant didn't have a sign. Harper stood on the sidewalk in front of a tall, matte black building with curved glass windows and a single brass door. The kind of place where people didn't stumble in, they were invited. She checked the address Lennox had given her, heart thudding against her ribs, and stepped inside. A woman in a sleek navy suit greeted her with a nod. "Miss Rowe, right this way." Harper blinked. "You already know who I am." "Mr. James made the reservation under your name," the woman replied, already leading the way. The hallway opened into an atrium lit by low golden chandeliers and flanked by vertical gardens. The scent of fresh basil and citrus hung in the air. Tables were spaced far enough apart for privacy, and every detail screamed exclusivity. Lennox stood as she approached, dressed in a charcoal jacket and open-collar white shirt. He looked like he belonged there, commanding, effortlessly polished. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "You came." "I almost didn't," she admitted, sliding into the seat across from him. "What changed your mind?" Harper reached for the water glass. "Curiosity, mostly, and maybe a little hunger." He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table. "You look stunning." She glanced down at her wrap dress and boots. "This old thing," "I meant your expression." His voice was low but steady. "You look like someone who doesn't let the world tell her who she's supposed to be." Harper tilted her head. "You always this intense when you order appetizers." He grinned at that but didn't answer. A server arrived, pouring wine without asking. She took a sip, surprised by the smoothness. "So," she said, setting the glass down. "Lennox James, who are you really?" He hesitated just a second too long. "You're not a regular guy who got lost at a fireworks show," she pressed. "No," he said finally. "I run a company. We design and build modular architecture, homes, resorts, disaster relief units. Our headquarters are in New York, but I've been in Crescent Bay scouting a coastal site for a new development." Harper blinked. "You're the guy behind Arcadia Structures." His brows lifted. "You've heard of it?" "Only because my ex-boyfriend was obsessed with your founder's TED talk, said you were changing the future of housing." Lennox glanced down, almost sheepish. "That talk was a disaster." "Maybe. But it made you famous." "I wasn't trying to be," he admitted. "I just wanted to build things that outlasted me." She studied him for a moment. "You don't talk like someone who's used to being thanked." He shrugged. "You get used to people being more interested in what you have than what you believe." The food arrived: caramelized scallops atop a pea puree and a side of roasted fennel. Harper raised an eyebrow. "Don't worry," Lennox said. "I called ahead to make sure they didn't serve anything unpronounceable or still moving." "Thoughtful," she said, slicing into the scallop. "So, what does a guy who could eat anywhere in the world want with a girl who works in a library and lives in a studio that still has radiator heat?" He set his knife down. "That night at the festival, you weren't looking around to see who was watching you. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You just were. That's rare." Harper placed her fork down slowly. "You keep saying things like that, like you've figured me out, but you don't know anything about me." "Then tell me," he said, not flinching. "Tell me why you came alone to that field. Why you looked like you were holding yourself together with thread." She inhaled sharply. "I'm sorry," he added quickly. "That was too much." "No," she said, voice quiet. "You're not wrong. A month ago my dad passed. I took care of him for 2 years while working full-time. After he was gone, I didn't know what to do with myself, so I went to the fireworks because he used to take me when I was a kid. Thought maybe I'd feel close to him again." Lennox reached across the table, not touching her, just steady. "Thank you for telling me." Harper nodded once, blinking hard. Most people just tell me I'm strong. You don't have to be strong with me, he said. She looked away, flustered. You say that like we've known each other more than 36 hours. Sometimes a connection doesn't care about time, she laughed softly. You definitely write your own quotes. I don't waste time pretending I don't feel things. That sounds exhausting, he smiled gently. Actually, it's kind of liberating. The second course arrived, grilled lamb with a fig glaze, and for a few minutes they ate in silence. Then Harper leaned back. Okay, she said. Your turn. For what? To tell me something you don't usually say out loud. He considered her for a beat. I'm terrified of being needed for the wrong reasons. She didn't expect that. I've been in relationships where I was more of a solution than a person, he continued. It messes with your sense of being wanted. Harper's voice softened. That's not who I am. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. When dessert came, dark chocolate mousse with chili flakes and sea salt, Harper took one bite and let out a low groan of approval. Lennox leaned in. If I'd known that was all it took to impress you. Don't get cocky, she teased. You're still on probation, he laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. Fair. As they left the restaurant, a sleek black car waited at the curb. He opened the door for her. Let me take you home, he offered. She hesitated, then nodded. As the car pulled away from the curb, Harper glanced at him. You don't strike me as someone who chases women. I don't, he said, but I'm not letting this go. She turned to the window, watching as the city lights blurred past. A strange feeling bloomed in her chest, like something had shifted. Like the road ahead wasn't as lonely as it had felt for so long. Neither of them said anything for the rest of the ride. But everything had already changed. Rain fell in a fine mist as Harper stepped out of the elevator into the rooftop greenhouse. She hadn't expected Lennox to pick her up in a vintage Aston Martin or bring her to a penthouse that seemed more secret garden than skyline view. But nothing about him followed the script she thought she knew. This place doesn't look like it belongs in Crescent Bay, she said, brushing moisture from her jacket sleeve as she took it in. Glass walls curved into a dome above them, vines trailing from hanging planters, and long wooden tables nestled between lemon trees and lavender bushes. The scent hit her first, sharp citrus and the earthy sweetness of rain-damp soil. It doesn't, Lennox replied, locking the elevator behind them. I had it built when I realized I needed somewhere that didn't feel like the rest of my world. She turned to face him. And what does the rest of your world feel like? Loud, watched, transactional. No one else was there, just the steady hum of hidden lights and the occasional drip of water from the glass ceiling. A small table had already been set in the far corner near the bougainvillea candles flickering low, 2 glasses of something gold and glinting. I thought you didn't do second dates, Harper said, walking ahead of him. I don't, he answered, but I didn't want this to be one. She stopped. Then what is it? He joined her at the table, pulling out her chair. Something I don't have the right word for yet, she sat, watching him as he poured the drinks. So what happens when the novelty wears off? Lennox met her gaze. I don't chase novelty. Harper traced the rim of her glass. You're used to people being impressed by what you can give them. I'm not interested in impressing you, good, because I don't care about your car or this penthouse. I know, he said. That's why you're here. The answer sat between them for a moment, dense and unflinching. She leaned back, folding her arms. I looked you up after our dinner. I figured you would. You're worth more than my entire town. Money isn't identity. It is to most people. Is it to you? Harper didn't answer right away. I think money reveals who someone already is. It doesn't change them, it magnifies them. Lennox gave a small nod, thoughtful. What did you find when you looked me up? You were engaged last year. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That ended before it ever really began. What happened? She wanted a title. I wanted a partner. And now, I'm not interested in finding someone to stand beside me for a photo op. She tilted her head. So what are you looking for? Someone who sees me when there's nothing left to give. Harper didn't look away. I'm not afraid of complicated, good, he said. Because I've never been simple. They ate slowly, the meal light grilled artichokes with herbed oil, thin slices of cured fish, a salad of blood oranges and arugula. Harper didn't ask how it appeared without anyone else entering the room. She guessed he had a private chef on standby, and somehow that didn't surprise her anymore. As the rain intensified, tapping softly against the glass dome, she stood and wandered toward a small bench tucked between two fig trees. Lennox followed but didn't sit. "I used to think being alone was easier," Harper said, watching the city blur beyond the droplets. "No expectations, no disappointments." "What changed?" She looked up at him. "I met someone who didn't expect me to pretend," Lennox's voice dropped. "I don't want a version of you." "I want all of it," she rose, standing in front of him. "Even the parts that might push you away, especially those." "Why?" Her voice cracked slightly. "You could have anyone, why this?" He didn't move, didn't touch her. Just looked at her like every answer had already been written on her skin. "Because you don't need me," he said. "And yet you're still here. That means more than anything I could buy." Harper let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You make it really hard to keep my guard up. Then don't. I'm not someone who falls fast. I'm not asking you to fall," he said. "I'm asking you to let go of whatever's keeping you from feeling what's already here." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the weight behind his ease. The restraint behind his confidence. There were pieces of him that no one else had been allowed to hold, and somehow she was already holding them. "I'm scared," she confessed. "So am I," he whispered, and then he kissed her. It wasn't tentative or testing, it was fierce, like a dam had cracked and neither of them could stop the flood. His hands cradled her face, her fingers curled into his collar, and the rain kept falling soft and steady above them. When they finally parted, Harper rested her forehead against his chest, heart thundering. "You don't get to disappear after this," she said quietly. "I wouldn't even know how," Lennox replied. She looked up again, eyes searching his. "I don't want a fairy tale." "Good," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I'm not offering one, I'm offering something real." Outside, the storm rolled low across the hills, thunder distant but steady. Inside the glass dome, beneath the quiet flicker of candlelight and the scent of soaked lavender, something unspoken settled between them, an understanding, impossible to name but undeniable in its truth. Whatever this was, it had already begun, and neither of them was backing away. Harper stepped off the elevator into the golden hush of Arcadia's Crescent Bay site. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the coastline like a painting, the ocean calm and endless beyond the glass. She clutched the portfolio under her arm, her heart thudding against her ribs not from nerves, but from everything that had changed between them. Lennox had invited her to the site that morning, casually, like it wasn't a gesture that meant something, but she knew better. He didn't waste moments. Not with her. He was standing at a drafting table near the far window, navy sleeves rolled to his elbows, thick sketches spread before him. When he looked up and saw her, the change in his expression was immediate quiet warmth blooming into something deeper, something settled. "You came," he said, setting his pencil down. "You invited me," Harper replied, crossing the room. "I didn't expect to walk into your mind's blueprint. I wanted you to see what I've been building." She watched him for a beat, then placed the portfolio on the table. "I brought something too." He opened it slowly. Inside were hand-drawn layouts, designs for a community reading garden, outdoor seating, kids' literacy corners, watercolors filled in the margins. She had spent the last 3 nights sketching them, unsure if she'd ever show him. "You did these?" he asked, voice low. "They're rough. But you said this development was supposed to be different. I thought maybe it could include space for people who don't usually get them." He looked at her like he was seeing something he hadn't dared hope for. This fits." Harper rested her hands on the edge of the table. "I'm not an architect, but I know what makes people feel safe. And sometimes, a bench under a willow tree with a book in your lap can do more than any therapist." Lennox turned one of the pages, tracing the lines with his thumb. "You've just given this place a heart." "I didn't do it for you," she said. "I did it because I believe in what this could be." "I know," he said. That's why it matters. A silence stretched between them, not awkward but full. He closed the portfolio gently, then stepped toward her. I've been thinking about what you said, that you're scared. Harper met his gaze. I still am. So am I, he said, but it's not the falling that scares me anymore. It's the idea of not trying. She looked at the windows, the ocean beyond. I spent so much time surviving that I forgot what it felt like to want something more. Lennox's voice was steady. Then take more, she turned back to him. You're not easy, you know. I'm not trying to be. I don't need perfect, she said. I just need honest. He took her hand, threading his fingers with hers. Then let me show you something. They left the office through a side door and headed down a gravel path that led toward the edge of the property. The wind picked up slightly, tugging at Harper's hair as they approached a partially finished terrace overlooking the cliffs. A small crew was packing up tools for the day. Lennox nodded at them and they slipped away with quiet efficiency. Why did you bring me here? She asked. He gestured to the open space. Because this is where it starts, she blinked. What does our life if you want it? Harper turned slowly, facing him fully. You're serious. I don't do casual, Lennox said. I've seen what happens when people half-choose each other. I'm not building something temporary, she searched his face. You barely knew me a week ago. I've never been more sure of anything, he said. You've already changed the way I see everything. Her voice shook slightly. What if I fail you? You won't, he said. And even if you stumble, I'm not going anywhere. Tears pressed at the backs of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she stepped closer and wrapped her arms around his waist, burying her face in his shirt. He held her like he was anchoring them both. Later that week, Lennox invited her to a gala hosted by Arcadia's board of directors. She hesitated at first, unsure if she belonged in that world, but he looked at her like she already did. When they arrived, the room hushed. Everyone turned. Lennox didn't release her hand. Instead, he led her up the marble steps of the ballroom and introduced her not as a date, but as a partner, someone who had inspired a new design direction for the Crescent Bay project. Harper stood tall, chin lifted, her voice steady as she spoke about the community spaces she'd envisioned. People listened. They didn't see a girl from a library, they saw a force of her own. Afterward, as the music played and champagne flowed, she stepped onto the balcony for air. Lennox followed, wrapping an arm around her waist as they looked out over the glowing coastline. I didn't think I could do this, she said quietly. You didn't do it alone, he replied, and you never will again. She leaned into him. How can you be so sure about us? He kissed her temple. Because I've never wanted anything that didn't scare me a little. And you terrify me in the best way. She laughed, brimming, and turned to face him fully. Then let's stop waiting, she said. Let's build something real. The next morning, they stood barefoot on the rooftop greenhouse, a small circle of close friends around them, no press, no fanfare. Just them under the lemon trees and morning light. Harper wore a simple linen dress. Lennox wore no tie. When he said, I do, he didn't just mean the vows. He meant every moment that came after. Every challenge, every joy, every late night and early morning. And when she said it back, she meant the same. The world below kept moving, but up there, in the place they'd first let their guards fall, a new beginning took root, not a fairy tale. Something better, something real. The scent of warm cedar and late summer jasmine drifted through the open windows of the cliffside home Lennox had been quietly restoring for months, a place he'd once bought as a retreat, never knowing it would become something more. Now, it sat fully transformed, not just into a house, but a home. Their home. Harper stepped barefoot through the sunlit living room, the wood beneath her feet still cool from the morning. Paintings lined the walls, none expensive, but all chosen together. A record played softly from the corner, something old and crackling, the kind of music that made you want to slow dance in the kitchen. She found Lennox outside on the back deck, a mug in his hand, eyes fixed on the horizon. The early light hit his profile just right, but she didn't say anything at first. She watched him instead, how still he was in the moment, not distracted, not calculating his next move, just present. "You're staring," he said without turning. "I'm allowed," she replied, walking up behind him. "Wife privileges." He turned then, offering the mug. "Coffee? I thought you didn't drink it." "I don't," he said, "but I figured if I made some, you'd come find me." She took the cup from him, hiding a smile. "Manipulative, effective," he added. They leaned against the railing together, silence stretching comfortably between them. Below, the waves lapped against the rocks in steady rhythm. Somewhere inland, the town was waking up, but it felt like the rest of the world didn't exist from here. "I got a call from the city council," she said after a moment. "They approved funding for the community garden." He turned toward her, eyebrows lifting. Already, they saw the new renderings. Said it was the first time they'd seen a proposal that actually considered the emotional needs of the neighborhood. "That's because you designed it with people in mind, not just aesthetics," she shrugged. "I just listened." Lennox reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "You changed everything, you know. You keep saying that," she teased. "Eventually I'll start believing it." "I don't say things I don't mean." He paused, gaze steady. "You didn't just change me, you changed the way I build, the way I think. The way I live." She rested her head against his shoulder. "You gave me the space to be more than what I survived. That matters too." They stood like that for a long time, the day unfolding gently around them. No press, no obligations. Just the quiet certainty of two people who had chosen each other completely. Later that afternoon, they drove into the heart of Crescent Bay in a weathered old truck Lennox had insisted on restoring himself. Harper had teased him about it at first, but now she found herself loving the way it didn't draw attention, how ordinary it made them feel. They stopped at the town square, where a small pop-up market had sprung up for the weekend. Harper wandered through the stalls with a canvas tote on her shoulder, stopping to talk to vendors she'd known for years. Lennox stood back, letting her move through the world she had once retreated from, now fully a part of it again. "You know you're going to have to speak at the opening ceremony next week, right?" she said, handing him a jar of apricot preserves she'd just bought. "Only if you stand next to me. I'm not the one who's been on magazine covers. I'd trade every one of them to hear you speak about your designs." She gave him a look. "That's a line." "It's not," he said. "You have a way of making people feel like the world could be softer." She didn't reply right away. Instead, she took his hand again and pulled him toward a stall selling handmade woven blankets. The woman behind the table looked up and blinked. "Harper Rowe," Harper smiled, recognizing her from years ago, one of the local artists who used to donate books to her library. "You're still here," the woman said, surprised. "I left for a while, but I came back. And you brought someone." Lennox extended his hand politely. "Husband?" The woman's eyes widened at the word. Harper laughed. "It happened fast." "Sometimes the right things do," Lennox said. They didn't stay long. Harper preferred quiet over attention, but by the time they returned to the truck, her tote was full and her heart was too. Back at the house, dusk settled in slowly. Harper lit the candles in the dining room while Lennox opened a bottle of wine. They ate on the terrace, knees touching beneath the table, the kind of dinner that didn't need conversation, just glances, just presence. As the stars appeared above them, she leaned back in her chair and exhaled. "I didn't think life could feel like this," she said. "Like what?" Settled, not in a boring way, in a full way. He reached across the table, brushing his fingers along her wrist. "That's what home is supposed to feel like," she smiled. "Then I guess we did it." He stood and came around the table, pulling her up into his arms. "We're not done." "No, no," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "We're just getting started." They danced there under the stars, no music but the waves and the wind, their bodies swaying in an unspoken rhythm. No tension, no walls, just truth. And when they finally fell asleep that night, limbs tangled beneath the linen sheets, the windows open to the sound of the ocean, it wasn't with uncertainty or fear, but with the quiet, steady knowledge that they had built a life neither of them had dared dream of before. A life that had begun with a single firework in the sky and ended with something far more enduring, Love that didn't need to be loud to be unforgettable. Love that had been chosen, over and over again, and would be every day forward.